with content that's going to be fascinating, interesting, relevant, and we are honored to have a guest today who returns to the Beacon, having been with us once in December. She's now in the midst of a campaign, an election cycle. We're honored to have her back, and we'd like to welcome to the program Nancy Bartow. Nancy, thank you for being with us.
It's a delight. Thanks for having me back.
Well, you're welcome. And of course, the Beacon is sponsored by Phoenix Christian Preparatory School. And so we're honored, as usual, to have the superintendent of PC on the program with us, Jeff Blake. Thank you for being here as well.
Steve, thank you. Thank you for hosting. Nancy, we're blessed you're here. And the last, well, heavens, the last few months have been just filled with issues. It's crazy how much has changed since our last recording with you, Nancy, in December. And I'm excited to talk issues and learn more about your campaign, and we're honored to support you.
Well, and Nancy, for the benefit of the listeners, please tell us the position that you hold, and then let's back up a little bit and talk about how you got into government and legislation and all of that, because that's an incredible story and one that really can't be told apart from God's divine direction in your life.
Thank you. Thank you both. I serve in the State House in District 15, which is North Phoenix primarily, but it stretches to Scottsdale, from Scottsdale Road to 67th Avenue, which is part of Glendale. It goes from about Bell all the way to Carefree Highway, so it's kind of a big rectangle. The best district in Maricopa County, in my opinion. And I've been honored to serve. It's been an incredible opportunity, and you're right. It's been miraculous because I was a mom before being appointed to office, and have just seen how God almost immediately opened some incredible doors and opportunities for me to, I think, represent Arizona well in terms of protecting our sacred freedoms and values. What got me interested in politics early on was the life issue. And having 3 daughters, it was very important to me to know that women were protected, that young girls were not being taken at school across state lines for an abortion. There was no law against all of that we were seeing. And so that got me involved. And once I was in office, I was able to become the health chair of that important committee, and I still chair the Health and Human Services Committee now, and have for many years, being able to address issues that really have a personal impact, have had a personal impact on my own life in terms of those dealing with mental illness, people, children in foster care. Our family members have done some foster care, and just being able to put more oversight and eyes on those agencies that handle very vulnerable populations.
Well, and as you said, I mean, you went from one incredibly valuable role in life as a mom to your 3 daughters, and investing in them, to another influential role, and that transition is one that I would think, as I recall, you wouldn't say that you saw that coming, that it was out of the passion and the concern for preborn lives that you were moved to action. That action led to some conversations and some meetings, and then take us back to that conversation where with your husband, you're like, wow, this looks like this is going to be something different than what I thought it was going to be.
Absolutely, complete role reversal. And it has been a huge learning curve, but it's been one of joy. And I think kind of a learning opportunity for me to, when I talk about my experience with groups and, at church, I encourage people, don't limit yourself. Don't think you have to have a certain type of background to be able to run for office, because, we have a citizen government in Arizona and in our entire country. That's what it takes. It takes people from all stripes and all experiences and all types of professions to really give the right input to get the best outcome for policy. And just speaking to life and education, freedom. Those two issues are so important to families right now, especially. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how, why I'm running for the office I'm running. It's an intense campaign because I felt called to take on the sitting senator in our district because she has not been voting according to the policies that I believe our electorate in our district really expects of her. And with our very, very narrow majority in the legislature in both the Senate and House, we can't afford to have people undermining those protections for the unborn, for families wanting to make sure that they have the right education environment and choice for their child. And so, but in the 10 years she's served, she's been voting against all of those things and other things. And so that's what this campaign is all about, is really making sure that all the gains we've made to protect the unborn in Arizona, we're a leader in that, and all the gains we've made for school choice in Arizona aren't going to be repealed overnight. And that could happen if we lose our majority.
Well, it's important to hear in the conversation the urgency with which you speak, and also to realize that what you said is true. As citizens, it's a citizen governed democracy, and I think, even I at times think, well, gosh, I see the people that are in office, and many of them have legal training and they're attorneys or they're public servants for their lives, and they have something that we don't necessarily think we might possess. They're eloquent as public speakers, whatever it is, these born leaders. And the reality of it is, and I think back to one of my favorite Bible teachers, Larry Wright, he used to often say that God's not nearly as interested in our ability as he is in our availability. And your story to me really, really is encouraging for those of us that might be tempted not to step outside of our comfort zone. I suspect the decision to make this campaign that you're currently in for Senate was a big one. There's some risk involved. It's not comfortable. You're going to be, people are going to take shots at you. It's going to be, it's not a picnic to do what you're doing. And here's the thing that I guess I hear in your voice, and I really want to affirm. And I want to encourage for our listeners who might be on the threshold of something outside their comfort zone. It takes, as it said, a greater fear to cast out fear. So any reservation you've had was overwhelmed by the concern that you have that if we don't make a change, we may lose the ground that we've worked so hard to gain in these conservative issues. Is that a fair, assessment?
It is. In fact, when people were asking me and challenging me to consider taking on this race about a year ago, that was what really did it.
Yeah.
I'm not termed out in the House. I'm in my first term back in the House. I have 3 more terms I could serve before being term limited there. So, it's pretty much a so-called safe seat.
Mm-hmm.
But when Joe and I started praying about it and looking at how at risk our values and freedoms are at this point in history, and after praying about it for many months, we didn't feel that was a safe seat anymore. It's not safe.
Mm-hmm. Nothing's
to
safe
see your
unless we
values
take the action. Yeah.
being thwarted, to see our freedoms being undermined. And when you have an opportunity to do something about it, I felt like we didn't have a choice except to take it on in God's strength and to see the support of people from all over the state come and participate in this campaign because they know what's at stake. They've been watching. A lot of people have been watching what's been happening. And so it's been an incredible faith-building endeavor for us.
Well, Jeff, it's so great to have Nancy back on the program, and it's such an encouragement to all of us that she is where she is, doing the things that she's doing, and I know specifically as it relates to her passion for opportunity and educational freedom. Phoenix Christian is one of many schools, and the families that are out there in the state that benefit from that. Boy, what an awful loss that would be to lose that ground, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a chance to spend some time yesterday with Steve Yarbrough, who's the former president of the Senate for the state of Arizona. And I mentioned that we were going to have an opportunity to spend some time with Nancy today. And he looked at me straight in the eye and he says, that is a really, really vital election. The issues there are crucial. And if there was a step back in that district, he looked at me and he said that would be a double loss.
1 minute.
And he has full support and love for Nancy and believes in the educational freedom and the issues that she stands for, and he's a firm supporter and really encouraged us to affirm the issues that we're going to cover today.
Well,
That's quite an endorsement, Nancy.
I know it is. And, Steve, we miss him.
Yeah, I bet.
We really do. I mean, he served many years, and he was the bold individual that promoted school choice like none other in our state, and he got it done. And he was such a valuable partner for families needing that kind of advocacy at the Capitol for years. And we need to protect those freedoms. It's just a shame when you see the state of our the racial divide, the divide in general, economic divide, how valuable school choice is to every economic demographic. And
Yeah, that's right.
all demographics take advantage of our ESA programs, of our charter schools, and they benefit from them. And yet the representation that we have in the legislature and even in Congress is anti
30
education
seconds.
freedom.
Well, hey, if you're tuning into the Beacon today, we're so glad you tuned into this episode. If you're just tuning in, we are welcoming Nancy Bartow as a returning guest. She represents District 15 in the House. She's in the midst of a Senate run for a seat in the Senate. Come back in this next section and we'll talk more with Nancy.
The Beacon is presented by Phoenix Christian, a school celebrating excellence in education since 1949. Learn more at phoenixchristian.org.
Hey, well, welcome back to this segment of this week's episode of The Beacon, where we welcome Nancy Bartow. Nancy, again, we are so grateful to have you with us on the program this week. Thank you for making yourself available.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just really great. If you are just tuning into this episode, we've been talking a little bit, as is the theme of the show, how God uses the unexpected to do the unexplainable. And so Nancy, now having served in the House of Arizona in legislation, is facing an incredible race, an important race, where she's now seeking to run against an incumbent a Republican incumbent that is in a seat in District 15. And Nancy, that's a little unusual. It's not something that normally happens, right, within a party, that somebody's like, hey, I'm going to unseat you. And so it's a bold move. And one of the things that I want to encourage the listeners to do, and we'll have links obviously with the podcast. If you're listening to us on 960 The Patriot and you want to know more or have links, you can find those wherever you get your podcasts for the Beacon, including phoenixchristian.org/Beacon. But one website, we'll have a few. One that we want to highlight for you, Nancy, is nancysrecord.com. This is a site that you put up that can give people a good, evaluation of how you vote, what you've been able to accomplish, what happens, and how you approach the legislative matters that are put before you. And so want to give an endorsement for that website. That's a good place to go to learn more. Is that right?
Well, that's what this is all about, is comparing voting records. And so we stood up this new website, nancysrecord.com, to just really highlight where I am on the issues, how I voted over the years on issues of importance to District 15 voters. Because frankly, when Republicans are voting, they're looking at specific issues
Mhm.
in the primary, especially life, school choice, Second Amendment, where you stand on the border, taxes and regulation, you know, the basics, healthcare, freedom, you know, do our parents' rights being protected? Are we moving forward on protecting life? All of these things are important. And if a voting record doesn't support these issues, it needs to come out. And so that's what this is about. It's just making sure that our voting records are exposed and people have a real choice, because in 10 years, my opponent's voting record really hasn't been examined to the degree it should have been during the primary. And so then people just automatically assume what it is. So there are other resources like the voter guides to look at. Center for Arizona Policy has the AZ voter guide that's really great on a lot of issues that are very relevant to this year.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I just encourage people to go. Christians need to get involved, and there are resources out there to make sure and examine where do they stand on the issues that are important to you.
You know, my wife and I rely so heavily on the voter guide that you mentioned that the Center for Arizona Policy makes available. And just if you're listening, that website is azvoterguide.com. We'll make that link available as well. But what a great resource. And it's interesting because what we find is they approach all of the candidates with the same list of questions in terms of where they stand on various issues. And, you know, some respond, and that makes it easy for us to know where they stand on those issues, and if we're in alignment and agreement and we want to vote for them. And quite candidly, others don't respond, and that also makes it very easy to know where they stand and that we probably don't align and that they're not willing to say where they stand. That's not a good policy if you're in governmental leadership to not reveal or disclose where you stand on certain issues. I mean, it's a really great tool. But you know, Nancy, I'm so thankful. I'm thankful for your example of your willingness to take on, you know, what many would describe as an uphill climb, because it matters and because you're passionate about it. And quite candidly, as we record this program today now, you know, at least 4 months into a global pandemic that's affecting all of us each and every day. It's a real thing. It's really happening. We're affected by this. And so all of these directional decisions that those in office and that hold public positions of leadership are making are somewhat amplified. You know, everything is more intense because so much is at stake. And so we just want to, the Beacon, Phoenix Christian, those of us who share the conservative values that we know you represent, want to say thank you for working so hard at such a critical time.
You know, and it's really easy to let this thing kind of overshadow involvement in the political sphere right now and miss these important primary votes and general election votes because we're so concerned about what's happening. We need to zero in even more and really make sure that you're getting the representation that you expect, and don't just necessarily believe the advertising of the candidates that they're sending you. We need to be informed.
What is that expression, Jeff? It's what you do speaks so loudly I can't hear what you say. And I think people's actions, and in this case, a voting record, speaks volumes about you know, where they're really at, even more so maybe than what a campaign ad might state. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it sounds spot on. Let the data speak for itself. Let the decisions that the representatives make speak for where they stand on the issues. And Nancy, that's why we're so blessed and excited to have you on the show this morning, and to really put a focus on the issues the bottom line of how folks are voting and what they're supporting.
2 minutes.
Now, Nancy, when we come back in this next segment, we want to talk specifically about why it's so critical that you're moving from the House to the Senate. But one example that we highlighted when you were on the program in December, something that you were working on, was a bill, Women in Sports Act. And in essence, I'll let you explain that. And I know that passed the House, and then talk about what happened after that. We've got about a minute and a half for that review.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. It did pass the House. A lot of good bills did. And then they got, COVID happened. Everybody went into lockdown, and we took a recess, the legislature did. When the state reopened in May, the House of Representatives chose to go back to work and finish a lot of work and send those bills over to the Senate. The Senate decided to adjourn instead and didn't do a lot of that important work and left many important bills to die, including the Women's Sports Act, Say Women's Sports Act,
1 minute.
pro-life laws bills, and other important bills that were just incredibly, like one that was supposedly, that was aimed at protecting businesses during a reopening from COVID.
From liability, or protecting them from
Yes,
things like that? Okay.
getting from being sued from frivolous lawsuits.
Well, when we come back in this next segment, we want to pick up where we left off, because there are things that all of us, I think, can do that will have a profound impact on where the legislation goes in our state during this critical time. So again, we thank Nancy for being on the program, and we thank you for listening in to The Beacon, where we talk about ways in which God uses the unexpected to do the unexplainable. Come back for our next segment, and thanks for listening in.
The Beacon is made possible by Phoenix Christian and listeners like you.
So welcome back to The Beacon. I'm your host. I'm Steve Woods. I'm here with Nancy Bardo, Jeff Blake. Thrilled to have you listening in as well. And, Nancy, in this segment, I think we just really want to acknowledge that, the COVID-19 era that we're living in has changed the landscape for all of us. There's so much uncertainty. There is, you have parents trying to decide, are my kids going back to school? Yeah, school's trying to decide, are we going to open and have the kids back? Are we not going to do that? How do we honor the civil leaders that are in place? And how do we honor the commitment we made to families, businesses? How do I make payroll? How do I continue to support the families that are a part of our core group of folks? I mean, that's businesses, and I've been a part of some that are, they're family-like in themselves. It's a group of people banded together to make a difference or a product. And the legislation and the civil leaders and the fact that, the House comes back, finishes the work, and then, as you mentioned, the Senate comes in and says, we can table this for a while longer. And we just look at it and go, okay, who's doing what, and how can we individually as citizens make a difference to navigate this unprecedented time in a way that is responsible and is intelligent and is decision making based on real hard data. What would you say to those of us that are listening that you intend to do, can do, have been doing, as it relates to those directional decisions, both personally and professionally? What do we do?
Well, that's a really big question.
I know, right? And you have 3 minutes to answer. Go.
A lot there. I guess I want to go back to something. I don't think we can overestimate the importance of sticking together as a party, and the importance of that vote to adjourn, to vote with the other side to adjourn session in the middle of this situation, and the effect that had. I mean, it shows a pattern, number one, of voting for my opponent on her record. She does this all the time. She crosses the aisle when it counts the most. And this is just an example of that. When we needed to be in session to protect those businesses from liability, give them liability protection from frivolous lawsuits as they reopen. the excuse was, well, the governor's going to call a special session and we'll get all of that COVID stuff handled then. Well, that has not materialized. And what we're seeing now is the legislature has no voice. The people have no voice. And all of the decision making is in the executive's hands. I don't think a lot of our voters are happy about that. And they should expect better. So, from that standpoint, I think that's why you're seeing a lot of frustration, because their voices are not being heard. As a pandemic, I think we've learned a tremendous amount since the beginning of this, and the data is speaking very loud, and I think our policy making needs to be adjusted accordingly, and I don't think it is in many cases. Reopening schools falls in that category for me. I think we are moving in a direction of expanding and exploiting the panic in some cases for political purposes. I don't see how you get around coming to that conclusion in many cases.
2 minutes.
As dangerous and serious as this disease can be, it's not affecting kids, and they're not the super spreaders we feared they were. So, we're going to be seeing more collateral damage, and I hate to put it in those dry, heartless terms of mental health issues that are expanding, that are going to explode if we delay further opening and denying the right and the opportunity for kids to get back to normal, back to school, and let their parents also return to a more normalized life.
Yeah, and I don't know that I could agree anymore. And I want to go back to what you said there at the beginning. The government system that was designed has a specific check and balance in it between the executive branch and the legislative branch, and to have the legislative branch in essence
1 minute.
push pause and if you will kind of phone it in at the end has left the executive branch with no check and balance, and your constituents and many frustrated because, like you said, they don't feel like they have a voice. So I think it's important to have that conversation. I think those of us who are the constituents and the citizens have an opportunity to communicate that. And one of the ways, the largest way that we can communicate that is with our vote. So it's important that people do the research and they know, hey, just because somebody has a sign around their neck that says Republican doesn't necessarily mean that they share your personal values. Don't take that for granted. Do the research on your own and find out. So again, if you're just tuning in, we have Representative Nancy Barto on the program. We're looking forward to going into this next segment, where we're going to kind of try to talk about some of the bigger issues that she is facing in this race that is so critical for her, for the state of Arizona, for District 15. Again, thank you for listening to The Beacon. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you.
Phoenix Christian believes strongly in its rich history and bright future, now equipping students from pre-K through 12th grade. Learn how you can help continue its legacy of Christ-centered education at phoenixchristian.org/support. You're listening to The Beacon, presented by Phoenix Christian.
All right, well, greetings and welcome back to The Beacon. We're so glad that you're listening today. We want to take a moment here on the program to thank Phoenix Christian Preparatory School for sponsoring the program. We also want to extend our gratitude to 960 The Patriot for airing the program weekly. And of course, again, today we want to welcome and thank Nancy Barto for being here. State Legislator Nancy Barto, we're honored that you've joined us again for your second appearance on The Beacon. We're so thrilled that you're here, and we're so grateful for the investment that you make through your life and the work that you do to make a difference for the state of Arizona, for all of our citizens. We're really, really thankful. We want you to know that we appreciate that, and we appreciate your effort, and we know how critical it is. Having talked with you again here in this program, we understand that the margin for the values that you represent in the Senate of Arizona is what motivated you to take on an incumbent, to realize that just because somebody has this particular badge on their website, it doesn't necessarily mean that their values are consistent with the voters that are either putting them in office or allowing them to stay in office. And so we can't take any of that for granted. And that's what I've learned in this program. I'm grateful for you to be here. So with this last segment, as you have a moment and you have the platform, help us know why that vote for Nancy Barto in this upcoming election is so critical.
Well, I don't think it takes a genius to look around us right now and see um, how divided our country is. And it's almost not too simplistic to say our freedoms and our values are clashing. And one side has to win. We talk a lot about bipartisanship, and there is a lot of that in government. I'm part of all of that conversation. A lot of bills pass that way. But when it comes to protecting life, in particular, states that have the strongest protections, now we still have a high rate of abortions. In Arizona, we still have the percentage of abortions of all pregnancies is still 13% of all pregnancies end in abortion in Arizona. So we still have a long way to go before we protect life. But compared to other states that don't have those protections, their rates are much higher. And so to see all of those be at risk, those bills, those laws that protect women getting information, to protect minors from being exploited from human traffickers, and all of that is at risk. When we have Republicans that espouse being pro-life or pro-school choice voting with the other side that only wants to repeal those laws, and we've seen those bills being proposed every single year, but because we have a pro-life majority, they're being stopped. Because we have a pro-education choice majority, they're stopped, except when Republicans vote with the other side. Unfortunately, the divide is that clear. So that's what this election is about on those two issues particularly. Our margins are so slim. We have 1 vote difference in the House and 2 in the Senate. So, if we lose our majority, what you're going to see in Arizona is repeals of all of those protections and freedoms and opportunities for students. You'll see our Second Amendment be at risk. You'll see taxes go through the roof, regulations go through the roof, and you'll see Medicare for all in Arizona. That's what's at risk in this race, because my opponent has been voting with the progressives on so many of these issues in particular. And so I've put my voting record up there to show that I'm solid on these issues at nancybartosrecord.com. And we need to make sure that people are looking at my opponent's voting record as well.
So yeah, if you're listening, we want to underscore that opportunity. It's nancysrecord.com, and from there you can find the voting record completely at nancysrecord.com. Don't miss that. That's a great opportunity to see if your values don't align with Nancy, because I think that once you know what's at stake, it's hard to not take action. It's harder to just be passive. And you might think, gosh, I got my own issues right now. I got these things that I'm dealing with my kids, and are they going to go back to school? Are they not going to go back to school? Am I going to go back to work? Am I going to work remotely? And all the uncertainty. Nancy said it earlier. The election moves on. The things are happening. We can't just sit this one out or phone it in. It's really critical. And Nancy, you mentioned among the primary issues that are at risk, educational freedom, the opportunity for parents to choose the best way in which they can educate their kids. And we have here on the program somebody who's affected by that every day, Jeff. And I know that you're a champion, not just of private Christian education, but of choice in education, because not every school is meant for every kid. Not every family connects with every style of learning. And that freedom, that opportunity that exists in Arizona it's on a fragile footing, and we need to make sure that it is protected in the Senate by electing Nancy and people who share her values.
There's no doubt about it. And again, when I met with Steve Yarbrough yesterday, he affirmed, specifically in Nancy's district, this could be a double loss. And the freedom for parents to choose the school of their choice, the educational vehicle of their choice, is on a razor thin margin. And that's why we need to be particularly aware of candidates that promote and support educational freedom. And I want to affirm to the listener that the free market model that's been introduced in the state of Arizona, and Arizona is on the lead, one of the leading states in the country on this issue, that the free market model of allowing choice in education has promoted competitive excellence in our schools, and we need to affirm and protect that. And if I could just add one other point here, if I've listened and been inspired by Nancy, her testimony, her personal journey into government and formation of policy, I want to draw a direct line between this conversation and for those that embrace the Christian Judeo story of Pharaoh and Moses in the Old Testament. Is Pharaoh was making choices of what was best for his people. In this country, in comparison to ancient Egypt, Pharaoh in the United States right now is in the first three words of our Constitution. It is we, the people, and we have a responsibility. And in the story, the ancient stories from the scriptures, we're told that Pharaoh, walking out of alignment with God, there was plagues that fell upon his land. And in the United States, I just want to go back to that number that Nancy shared that really caught my heart and caught my attention, that 13% of all pregnancies will end in abortion. Planned Parenthood will annually produce a report that almost celebrates, over 300,000 abortions performed. There is a plague upon our land. We've allowed it upon ourselves. And we are Pharaoh in this country. As we the people, we have a responsibility to stand up to protect issues of educational freedom and pro-life. And that's why we're proud as a school to support and celebrate leaders in our community that recognize the severity of the circumstances and are willing to take a stand.
Well, Nancy, I'll let you respond to that.
I couldn't have said it better. The question is that parents, I think, are asking themselves is who owns your children? The state or the parent? And, we've really, I think, accepted some flawed philosophies over the years in thinking that somehow parents are getting away with something because they have opportunities for a different educational experience for their children than the public school. Look what's happening in our public schools. Look at comprehensive sexual education. Look at the lack of historical context that our kids are learning in many of these schools. Parents need a choice more than ever because their values and even our freedoms are being undermined there. This is not, some far-fetched idea anymore when you look at socialists being on the ballot in the presidential election. So yes, this is an incredibly important year. The Supreme Court just upheld a great opportunity for school choice across the nation. You can't discriminate against religious schools simply because those school dollars, those tax dollars that the parent pays, wants to choose a religious school. This is a great lesson in the judicial issues that our presidents will continue to have in appointment of judges going forward to uphold those kinds of freedoms at the highest level, because our courts make those decisions the final end of the day. Yes. All of these things are so critical right now. Our freedoms and our values and our children's future.
Well, and with that, Nancy, we will give our wholehearted endorsement as the Beacon. I know that we have, I know my mom listens and my daughter listens. We don't know how vast our audience is, but on behalf of our humble program, we thank you. We thank you for being on the program. We thank you for the work you're doing. We thank you for the encouragement that you've given and for the example that you are. And we thank you again for being on the program today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to be cheering for you, and we want to encourage everybody again to do the homework at nancysrecord.com. Check it out for yourself, District 15. We're counting on you to come through, and Jeff, we'll yield the rest of our time to you and let you kind of put a bow on things. Give us an update on Phoenix Christian, what God's doing there in this crazy time.
Well, you bet, Nancy. You're encouraging me. I tell you what, I spent the first 15 years of my life teaching history. And as I reflect back on it, what we really did every day in those classes, specifically in American history, was essentially share with our kids, here's the founding tenets of our country, here's what we're about, here's the triumphs, and here's dimensions where we could have gotten it better. And every day what we were really doing, whether the kids knew it or not, is we were handing the country back to them and affirming the principle that we are Pharaoh. We the people, this is your country. Here's the lessons from someone a few generations ahead of you, and we're giving it back to you. And as someone who's answered the call and is willing to stand up and be a representative voice in our democracy, we celebrate you, we affirm you, we thank you for that. And the issues are vital and the issues are crucial, and that's why we're blessed to learn from you this morning and to learn more about your record and to celebrate that. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your service to our state, and to our community, and as a leader who's willing and available, as Steve has affirmed earlier in the program.
2 more minutes.
I want to also share that yesterday, a group of other Christian school leaders and members of the diocese in leadership were able to meet with the governor. And I want to affirm that one of the things that we encouraged the governor to share, that private schools are unique. As we support educational freedom. Our classrooms are not full of 35 to 37 students. Our classrooms on average have class sizes of 16 to 18, and that we are unique and nimble and able to make decisions. We encourage the governor to differentiate age groups as we make decisions on when to reopen school. We also affirm to the governor that there's other dimensions to be aware of, such as the mental health of our students. Certainly here at Phoenix Christian, we are impacted. We saw a particular impact among some of our special needs and autistic students who really suffered from the social isolation of shutting down on-campus learning. So as a school, we're committed. We respect the civil authority of the government, but we also believe firmly that we want to provide on-campus instruction to get our students back in the classroom, and that school like Phoenix Christian is COVID prepared. And you can learn more about Phoenix Christian at phoenixchristian.org. You can enroll now. We are ready. We're COVID prepared and honored to serve our community with a Christ-centered education.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that update. Thank you for your leadership, Phoenix Christian. We're grateful to have PC as a sponsor of the Beacon. We're thankful to our listeners for listening, and we're certainly grateful to Nancy for being with us on the program. Today, we want to encourage you to go to phoenixchristian.org/beacon or anywhere else that you get your podcasts to listen to other episodes. You'll find a summary and an invitation to listen in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Beacon. Have a great day.
Perfect. You are clear.
Nancy, I can hear the conviction in your voice, and I'm inspired by you.
Yeah. It matters. It matters. What you're doing matters. I know at times you're probably exhausted and discouraged. And before we let you go, I want to ask Jeff if he would just pray for you to have endurance and encouragement on the home stretch. Will you do that for us, Jeff?
Thank you. These kinds of things are like, I think the hardest thing for me is I'm not the silver-tongued orator that I compare myself to others constantly on that. So that's my thorn in the flesh.
you have that in common with Moses. Let's hope that God uses you at the same level.
Well, I really appreciate, being able to share my heart, and
it's great.
I hope, to get people engaged. So thank you for the opportunity and for being the platform you are for all of this, for yourselves, for, Phoenix Christian, for doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Well, with Miriam's help, we'll continue to push this episode out. We'll make sure you get the links so that if you want to include it in one of your emails, then you have the chance for your listeners to hear directly from you as well. And again, Jeff, we just want to thank the Lord for honoring our initial prayer and pray a special blessing over Nancy, and then we'll get on with it.
You bet. So Father, Steve's affirmed, and you heard it, Father, that she does have a solidarity with Moses. She's available, and there's a calling, and there's a conviction in her voice, Father. And she's a living curriculum of someone who's obedient to you. And so, Father, we lift her to you. Father, give her endurance, give her strength, give her courage, Give her words, give her confidence, and Father, protect her marriage, Father, and may there be encouragement there and affirmation, Father, in the private conversations of the reflections after a long day's hard work and putting herself out there, which is draining. And so, Father, may she sense an anointing, a spirit-filled filling of her heart, and may she know of your love, and that above all, above everything, above every comment, every word, every personal self-assessment, that what defines her is that your love for her, and that she is your beloved child, and may that define her in every moment and guide her through every moment with great courage and confidence and affirmation. Father, thank you for Steve and his careful leadership of this program and hosting. Thank you for Miriam and Jeremy, and the opportunity through our donors to provide this service to our community. We lift it all to you and ask your blessing on Nancy's campaign. And so we trust you with all things and lift these prayers and thoughts to you. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, have a terrific day. Jeremy, thank you as always. Jeff, good
Oh, you
luck
guys are the
getting-
best. My pleasure.
Yeah, good luck getting moved back into your new computer. And I'll continue to pray, Jeff, that God gives you the endurance and encouragement that you need as you lead too. I know it's a big task.
Thank you. Yeah, you remember we're having open house today, so I got to jump out there and be a smiling face.
All right. Well, you can put a note on your mask that says, "I'm smiling underneath this mask." Just draw a smile on it.
We're all getting good with smiling with our eyes.
Right. Yeah. My eyes are smiling. All right, guys. Thanks. Have a terrific day.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you, Jeremy.